Greetings all. Okay, well I can't get any more real vehicles for a while yet, as you know, so I'm going to go back to the Switchology series. And if you're relatively new to the channel and haven't scrolled back to have a look at them, the Switchology videos I use a simulator, usually Steel Beasts Pro PE, and I go over the user interface and fire control systems of different vehicles because it's interesting how different they all are. Now, when you go back to steam gunnery in World War II, it's all very simple, and you could fire one tank, you probably fire the other without any great difficulty. Modern vehicles are a little bit more complicated, and as much as possible, I do try to use the advice of people who actually served on the vehicles, because they'll give me a couple of hints and tips of things that aren't necessarily modeled in the simulator. Anyway, so I decided I was going to start with the Pizarro from Spain, mainly because as far as I know, I don't know any Spanish infantrymen, let alone any Spanish mech infantrymen who would be able to tell me how to do the various different things that you do in the Pizarro. And well, I had to start with something to restart the series, as it were. The vehicle itself, it's the ASCOD for Spain. ASCOD is the Austrian-Spanish Cooperative Development Vehicle. So Austria and Spain decided to get together and make a joint vehicle. Hey, it's cheaper that way, fantastic. Usually these joint exercises tend to result in abject failure, but it seems to have worked out in this case to the point that even the British were starting to use ASCOD-based vehicles and bringing them into service with the Ajax series. So without any further ado, let's go see what the Pizarro does. Okay, so here we are with our Pizarro. Under the hood is an MTU cranking out about 600 horsepower, a little bit more on the Austrian version, but on the other hand, the Spanish get this domestically designed ERA suite. Point to note on the outside are the smoke dischargers by Wegmann. They are categorized as having 2 banks of 3 per side, so that's 1 bank, 2 banks. On the far side, 3 and 4. While I'm on the far side, we can also see that the troop commander, the dismount commander, gets a full hatch with cupola. And if you have to, it's possible to simply open up one of the back hatches and stick your head out. It is, of course, an IFV. The primary function is to let troops out. You do note this appears to be a firing port in the rear, together with this viewport. Seating for 6, you can see the turret basket on the inside. It is rotating around. I'm not actually sure if that's realistic or not, given what's happening on what you see on the inside of the vehicle. Big vehicle for all of 6 personnel, really. And of course you will note that it is a hydraulically opening, sideways opening door, not a lowering ramp. There are multiple schools of thought on that one. There are actually some deliberate design decisions to go in favor. Convoy light on the right there. Up front, your weapon systems, you have a coaxial, that's an MG3, the German machine gun on the Spanish vehicle, and the cannon is the Mauser MK30. And you will recall that the 20mm Rheinmetall cannon on the Marder had a ridiculous rate of fire. Well, so does this. For a 30mm cannon, it has an 800 rounds per minute rate of fire. Again, compare that to the Bradley, the 25mm chain gun. That is all of 200 rounds per minute at the high end, and low setting is 100. So this thing pumps out quite a bit of HE. External sights for the commander and the gunner. The gunner is bigger because it's combined with a thermal imager. So that's about it for the outside. Let's hop in. And we'll start the tour with the commander's position. Nothing too unusual here. You'll see that the hatch is a simple swing up and back type. The mounting point here, obviously, for your signal flags. So if you go to the open protected, this is as close as you get to open protected, just it's up at an angle. So you get some protection. It's not as good as a true open protected, but it will, generally speaking, do the job for you. So, coming back in, and a tour of the interior. Start at the back, I guess, with the two radios. Presumably, again, I don't know how the Spanish do things, but I would assume one is on the platoon net, one is on the company net. I note that the main J box is American, or at least it seems to be. It's got English English notations on it. This also is for the intercom system, but the radio itself does seem to be Spanish. I'm going to move this way a little bit just to get us a bit of a better view. Behind here is the access port for the gun. You can see it elevating and depressing. As I say, it's a dual feed 30mm. The ammunition this fires is either German or Norwegian. The AP rounds are tungsten, and you'll see them here. I'll come back to them in a second. The coaxial is also on the left hand side. Controls, the commander's joystick. Okay, I say joystick, here's me with the computer game. Commander's control handle. On the front is a palm switch and a trigger. The two buttons, one is for a laser rangefinder and the other is a battle site entry. So if you're not sure what the range is, just hit battle site, you're good to go. Sights, let me come back up here. Thermal sight extension and the gunner's primary sight, and up here is the unity sight. We will again come back to these in a bit. Or sights for the commander's daylight sight. I say primary sight. It is an auxiliary sight, but it is the commander's main one. Control box to his front. So these controls are for the water and the heater for his periscope, so he can clean his periscope. You'll see the turret clock going around here, because you will see that the basket doesn't give you any particular information. And this is what I saw was a little bit weird, because on the inside of the vehicle you saw that the basket was turning, which is dangerous. Here it looks like it's a fixed basket in the hull and the turret just kind of scans around suspended above. So you still want to make sure that your feet stay inside the basket, such as it is. This appears to be it here with this protective sheet. But on the other hand, if something does fall out, your foot does get fall out, there's nothing inside this exterior that it can really catch against, and then you lose your leg. Intercom system for the TC's helmet. I like this armrest here for the override handle. Ammunition feed on the left hand side. You can fit 80 rounds on the belt. As you can see, the belt feeds forward and it starts to tilt downwards, nose forward, as it gets closer to the cannon. Up at the top is a round counter, shows you how many rounds you have fired, and there is a reset button. And the reason you want to know how many rounds you have fired is that, unlike most guns on IFVs, the shell casings are retained in a shell casing bin down at the bottom here. You get space for about 130 before you gotta open it up and chuck it out the hatch. You don't have to put AP in here, although that's your standard default. There is a control box in here. If you lift up this flap, you'll see rotators, and depending on which number you select on the rotator, that tells the ballistic computer inside what ammunition type you have inside each ammo bin. So if I were to open this up, because we obviously have discarding Sabo ammunition in the left bin, this left wheel would have the number 6. As you keep going around, your standard interior lights. So yeah, that was the reset. So when you do empty out your shell casing, hit reset. My copy of Jane's tells me that the links for the 30mm also are fed back out into a bin, and that's about it. It's your release there for the hatch up top. This is your travel lock for turret, so if this gets levered up, the the turret is locked in traverse, and this would be for locking in elevation. So now you see the cannon is no longer elevating or depressing as the system goes around, and that releases the elevation lock. When you have it locked, you're going to see a warning light comes up here, indicating, hey, you've physically stopped the vehicle from doing something. And of course the light is now off, and we will come back to this in a moment as well. So having a look at this control panel, it's a control panel. There are two options here. Is basically in battery or out of battery, for lack of a better term. So God knows how you pronounce this, Sierra Atras perhaps, or Sierra Atras, and it is basically relates to the position of the block and sear. This is your selector. This tells you what happens when you pull the trigger. So MG is you have the MG selected. IZQ is for the left hand side, and DER is the right hand side. So that's your 30mm left bin, 30mm right feed. Cannon safe or weapon safe, and this is electrical fire. So electrical safe, I should say. Electrical fire. Should you be in safe, you pull the trigger to your heart's content, nothing happens. This tells you the burst size. So right now you have selected machine gun 6-round burst, machine gun just regular as long as you pull the trigger. Same with the 30mm, 3-round burst, 5-round burst, 10-round burst, or single shot. End of belt override. You have about 24 rounds before you get to around here where you can no longer connect your reloads to the end of the feed. So there's a sensor, like in most of the other autocannon systems. When you get to that 24 rounds and you break through that sensor, this will light up saying, hey dummy, you got to reload before you pull the trigger. If you have to pull the trigger right now, whether you like it or not, you push the button and you may expend the remaining rounds. All right. So actually I will come back to those a little bit later. Let's move over to the side here. What you're looking at here is actually a manual traverse drive. So you see the shaft comes all the way down to the hull. I don't know what these are for. And the control box up here is shared with the gunner. This is a safety interlock override. So if the hatches are open, there is a warning light that crops up saying the hatches are open, and you will not be allowed to fire or move the turret over those open hatches. If you open this safety switch, it's an interlock, and commanders will be familiar with it, and it allows you to move over. Motor error, so it's an electrically operated turret, so if that lights up, one of your motors has broken or burned out. It's the hatch open. This is, if I recall, low voltage. I might have to check that one up. Actually, I do need to come back to the other side in a moment. This big red button is very simple. It is the power switch. If you hit this switch, the turret just shuts off completely. Everything in the turret that's electrical dies. And it comes back on again. You can turn on your stabilizer. It takes a second or two for the gyros to spin up. These are your turret motors. You have to power those on separately. Now, as we traverse over the left-hand side, you'll see that these warning lights light up. So let's go forward, is they're off. These are depression limits. So over the rear deck, obviously, you cannot lower the gun because otherwise you'll just hit the rear deck. And you can see why. Now, interestingly, so it's from about the 7 o'clock to the 5 o'clock you can't depress the gun. Interestingly, there is also a depression limit over the front left corner. So around here, possibly because of the possibility of opening up the hatch, is also a depression limit. Now, I don't see a physical interference, so I don't know why it is there and you don't just use the hatch interlock, but that is what they've done. So over between 10 to 12, give or take, you have a safety which prevents the gun from being depressed. Other buttons on here, that is for nulling your drift. This is, it's like the cigarette lighter on your car. It's a 24 volt DC power socket. Obviously it's twice the voltage of your car. Power on self tests, something to do with the motors, I can't quite recall. No, I'm sorry, this is to do with the gun sear. So should you have an error and the gun is not ready to fire, you got to do a immediate action. Push this red button, it will pull back the bolt and you can conduct maintenance. You push the green button and it will return the bolt and sear to the firing position. Now, you will recall in the recent Q&A I did, I talked about the Aries cannon as to how it fired out of battery in a forward motion. It's the same with this Mauser. To reduce the recoil, the gun is in a forward movement as the cannon is fired. I think that's it for the overview. I'm going to hop over now to the gunner side for the overview, and we'll talk about the actual mechanisms a little later. Now, you'll see that the right stowage bin is much bigger. Oops, is that right? Because on the left-hand side you had the radios where the ammunition goes. On the right-hand side you got 120 rounds of 30mm. There's only an additional couple of hundred rounds stored. There isn't a hell of a lot of main gun ammunition compared to, let's say, the Bradley in this vehicle. But same idea, zigzags around, comes around through the feeder, tilts forward, and then in. He has his own dome light, he has his own hatch, of course, control. He's got a couple of extra periscopes around the side. Right rear, right forward, a unity sight up front. You can close the gun shield for the unity sight. This is also an auxiliary cannon sight as well. We'll talk about that in a few moments. He has a similar control panel, so burst type, cannon left, cannon right, fire or safe. Control handles, very simple. Battle sight input, laser rangefinder, there's a palm switch for control and triggers on each handle. On the left hand side, this is for the thermal imager controls, contrast, polarity, white hot or black hot, field of view, aka magnification, the basic on off switch. This is for zeroing, or correction, bore sighting your thermal imager, and this is the focus selector, near focus or far focus, plus a test button. You will have a laser rangefinder on or off, and a first selector or first return or last return, plus reticle illumination for the day sight. Coming down, the primary input panel. So when you're setting things up, you can enter the air temperature. Let's say it's a nice warm day in Spain. We'll say it's 28 degrees, and we'll enter that into the system. Enter your altimeter. Now, why do I have an altimeter as opposed to a barometric setting? I'm not entirely sure, but let's say we're at 225 meters, or 227 meters. Enter that into the system. In reality, for an autocannon, you probably aren't too worried about this, and especially the wind speed. You can put in the wind speed if you like, although you almost wonder if it doesn't have a setting for wind direction. But again, with an autocannon like that, you just fire off, you burst off target. These are the various different ammunition types which can be selected. Down at the bottom, again, you have more options for emergency backup. We'll talk about the range entry mechanism in a moment. Where's this? So this is the cant sensor. So you can disable, it's not modeled in the game, but you can disable the cant sensor, or if the cant sensor has simply gone offline, it will light up and let you know, hey, you no longer have cant, and that's for if the vehicle is tilting to one side or the other. This is, in an American gunner, we call it the subdes button. It's for entering discrete correction factors for the specific type of ammunition that you have loaded. And this is for bore sighting. And together with the buttons here, yeah, that is how you will do your bore sight. You get a fail indicator if something has gone heinously wrong. This is the gun control on or off, simply. This is also for bore sighting, I believe. And a test button, why not? So we'll talk about those in a little bit. Filter, straight up is no filter. Put to the left is a neutral filter for foggy days, and to the right is a yellow filter for particularly sunny days. Just scan around, you see his little basket is pretty narrow as well. This doesn't strike me as being the most comfortable vehicle. Traditionally, these are power transformers. I don't know if they are here or not, but let's just say they are. And I think that's about it for the gunner's position. So let's hop around and see about doing some shooting of things, and we'll see how the fire control system actually works. Okay, so we're going to start off with the primary or the daylight sight. Your reticle is in mils as ever. So generally speaking, you are looking at 5 mils for a long horizontal, 2.5 mils for a short one. The dot is 1 mil. There's another mil to the top here, making a grand total of 4 mils to get to the bottom of the line. It's another 2 mils, another 2 mils, another 2 mils. The range is in tens of meters, in decameters. The ammunition type is displayed, is the letter on the right. So this currently is configured for 1,800 meters in a ballistic computer for armor piercing. Should I wish to go to high explosive, you get a G. And if you want to go to the machine gun, it moves to an A. Let's hop back up to AP. Actually, what I'm going to do is going to hop over to the TIS quickly and find me my targets. Okay, there they are. It is, as I say, a fully stabilized system. So as I start moving around, you'll see no particular problems with tracking. Lasing is simple. You lase. That tells you got first return. If I hop out, actually it tells you there's only one return. So let me get a multiple return here if I can. Okay, so the dots now here indicate I have a multiple return. I have a first return and a last return. So I'm currently in first return. If I go to last return, 990 meters was the last return range. The first return, 970 meters. So realistically, there's no particular difference between the two there. But I now have no return, pull the trigger, and simple as that. Now you will see the little puffs of smoke on the side. Those are your saber petals. So when you are firing, and this applies to anything that fires a saber round, they seem to dislike being shot at. You always got to worry about friendly troops that are that close. So let's hop over to the high explosive round. We have another multiple return here, but let's see what happens. So that's the 3-round burst. So let us hop up a little bit. Let's try this. To the 10-round burst. He is dead. What a surprise. Now, if you're tracking a moving target, it's not quite ideal. So you track it for a while. So you figure out what the lead calculation is for the computer. Once you laze, you hold the laze button down and the sight offsets. Bring the reticle back onto the sight and you get your hit. Okay, so again we have troops to kill. Now if you're on the move, same thing. Except if it's a stationary target, it goes in reverse. But in this case we're both moving, so laze. And a very satisfying boom. Same happens if you hop into the TIS. So we have wide field of vision and narrow field of vision. Stationary target, laze, and you'll see that because I'm going forward, you got to put reverse lead, and you get your hits that way. Now the machine gun, of course, as I say, you select that and the letter changes to A. Let's just drop to a smaller range here, 370 meters. As continuous, or you can have, as I say, 6-round bursts. And that's the end of that. And that is basically the gist of the fire control system. It is still a relatively simple one. Now, if you get a fault in the system, there is a third light which lights up ordinarily. Okay, so we got there. Cooey. Oh, I'm still running machine gun rounds. Very determined BMP. And now a very unhappy BMP commander. Now, of course, this vehicle has no missiles. So black hot or white hot, so let's go to Negro Caliente, which is your black hot. Same basic idea. Generally speaking, acquisition is easier in white hot. Sometimes target identification is either in black hot. So that's why you might want to do that. And that is basically it for the sake of the controls. Now, if things start going haywire, as I say, you put the battle sight, there's a battle sight button on the controller. It's the left controller for the gunner. And it defaults to 1,800 meters for armor piercing, 1,000 for HE, and 600 for the machine gun. You can also manually enter. So let's say there's a target that I want to shoot with my 30 millimeter and it is at distance 1,900, enter. So hopefully, yep, you can see it's gone to 1,900 meters. So that is how that works that way. It is of course possible to turn off the stabilizer. And now as you start running around, of course, you see that you are down to purely stationary fire. If you laze, interestingly, it seems that, at least in this computer game, the reverse lead is applied. So I would need to find somebody in the Spanish. Usually stabilization will disable the ballistic computer's offsets for the sight, but maybe not, because you're stabilizing the... No, that doesn't make sense. Somebody else will have to tell me, I'm afraid. I don't exactly know the answer to that. Now, if things really do go to a hell in a handbasket, there are manual backups, as you can imagine. So, elevation is this handle here on the right. The handle falls out, and you hand crank. And as I said, for traverse, it's this handle here. Very simple. You don't want to be doing it if you're in a hurry, but it's an option. Now he does have one last option, as I say, and that is this unity sight here, which, if all else fails, follow my tracer. So let's say we don't like this bush very much, or we go to AP. And quite literally, all you're doing is you're just aiming, putting your target right in the middle, and aiming off until you get onto your target and you have effects. That's basically the gist of it for the gunner. Now, as I say, if you hop over to the commander, he doesn't have much else to play with. The sight extension is the same. Obviously, he doesn't control quite as much, but he can override and do his own shooting if he wishes. The auxiliary sight is for the commander's use only. And interestingly, the gunner doesn't get the use of the auxiliary sight. And this really is simply a case of steam gunnery. So you estimate your range to target. The reticles on the left, or APDS on the right, are your multi-purpose. And on the far right is your machine gun. So 1,400 meters, let's say, on the AP scale is there. And I'm short because I'm firing. There we go.
Fire.
There we go. And so that was about 900 meters for, maybe a little less for the AP. So if we go to the coaxial machine gun to get the same thing, go to 900 meters here. And where the hell? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong reticle. There we go. It's a lot closer. German machine gun, of course, ridiculously high rate of fire. Is the stabilizer on? No, it's still off. So he does have, as I say, one last optic, emergency optic here. You push his handle forward, flips down the mirror, and it is the same unmagnified emergency, just follow my tracer sort of thing. Cover for the ballistic shields, come down on the outside. Oh yes, I knew I forgot something, the smoke grenades, which aren't just smoke grenades. So this is actually your standard Wegmann controller, just they put things in Spanish. So by default, there are multiple positions. So you can select right forward bank, right rear bank, left forward or left rear. But for the rear banks, you can also fire individually because you have the option of using high explosive rounds instead of your standard smoke. So power off, power on, and you push this and off goes a high explosive round. So let me just make sure I'm looking in the right direction first. Go back to the TC's position. I now have a HE round set. fire, and it goes off. So the manual, or at least Jane's, tells me that the effective range of the frag grenade is 50 meters. And of course you also have your typical smoke launcher. So as you can see, also the rubber caps come off, which is a nice touch as you fire them. Oops. There are no strange fire control modes. This is still a fairly simple fire control system. So there's no air mode, there's no programmable fusing for the high explosive rounds. I may or may not have mentioned these for zeroing the daylight sight. That said, the Spanish are starting, they've already fired 72 rounds. The Spanish are starting an upgrade program already for the Pizarro. So it's entirely possible that this simulator will soon be out of date. The sights, by the way, if I recall, are fixed by 8 for the daylight, and the thermal is between by 12 and by 4. The mil scale is a little bit different, so this is a 1 mil square. You're looking at, as I recall, 2 mils here to here, 2.5 here to here, 5 from here to here. All to help you estimate range if you can't aim off, because you're only carrying a few hundred rounds of ammunition, which obviously will run out sooner than you would like. So there you go, the Pizarro IFV. I'd put this as more or less a second generation IFV together with the Bradley. It's got a computerized fire control system, so stabilized on the move, but no fancy tricks like fire control modes, fusing on the ammunition or anything else like that. So we'll see what the Spanish do as the upgrade. And that is that. So there you go, that was Pizarro. Now again, the Austrian version of it, Ulan, is simulated in the game as well. So I'm going to come back to that at another time. It's an interesting contrast, if you look between the two vehicles, as to how customer configuration can make such a difference. The Ulan being immediately a more capable and probably more expensive vehicle. Again, if you are a former crewman of any of the vehicles that are simulated, please reach out to me either in the YouTube comments below, I do read them, or perhaps on my Facebook page. Things I'm looking for example, BMP-2, T-72, Finland, looking at you guys I guess, Centauro, Challenger 2, well the fire control system is modeled but the vehicle isn't, CV9035, CV9040, Leopard 1, Leopard 2A4, Leopard 2A5, Leopard 2E for Spain, STRV 122 for Sweden. Actually, I'm thinking if you're any Leopard 2 crewman, give me a shout. I can probably figure out most of the mechanicals at least. The Lux, of all things, is in this. Ulan, as mentioned, the VEC M1, interesting choice. Basically, reach out and help me make a better, more accurate video. Oh, Belgians, DF30, DF90, if you're in there as well. So I hope you found it interesting and informative, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.